I am Easton Reynolds, 38 years old, and my life seems to be forever stuck in an endless loop of relentless effort. I work as a project manager for a financial company in a big city, where numbers and reports are my daily companions. I've been grinding here for the past 10 years, pouring sweat and tears into every project, hoping that one day there would be a real turning point. But no, I'm still just a small cog in a massive machine. Salary enough to live on, but not enough to dream big. Every morning when I wake up, I look in the mirror and ask myself, what are you striving for? And the answer is always Leon, my 9-year-old son, the center of my universe. After the divorce 3 years ago, I became a single father. My ex-wife, Sarah, chose to start a new life with another man, leaving Leon for me to raise. In the early days, I was panicked and lost, not knowing how to balance keeping my job while caring for such a young child. But day by day, Leon gradually became the only reason I stayed strong. The boy with bright eyes and an innocent smile always made all my fatigue vanish the moment I opened the door and stepped into the house. We live in a small apartment in the suburbs, where everything is arranged neatly, saving every penny. I don't dare take risks. I don't dare make mistakes. My life revolves around 3 things: work to pay the bills, caring for Leon so he doesn't lack anything, and saving for the future. A future I hope will be better for my son. Then the opportunity came, unexpectedly like a passing breeze. My boss called me into his office one rainy afternoon. "Easton, you've been selected for this business trip," he said, his voice full of expectation. It was a week-long trip to New York, where I would directly handle negotiations and sign a major contract with a strategic partner. This contract was no small matter. It involved millions of dollars and could open the door to promotion that I'd been waiting for all these years. If successful, I had a chance to be promoted to senior management with double the salary, and for the first time in my life, I could buy a decent house for Leon and send him to a better school. But if it failed, my boss didn't say it outright, but I understood clearly. I'd be sidelined or even lose my job. This wasn't just a project. It was a turning point. The one chance after years of diligence that I couldn't afford to lose. I was excited, but then reality hit me in the face. Who would take care of Leon for a week? Sarah now lives in another state and we don't stay in touch much. The only relatives I could rely on were my biological parents, Hudson and Riley Reynolds. They live in a small town 2 hours' drive from the city, in the old house where I grew up. My father, Hudson, is a man of few words, a former auto mechanic who retired early. My mother, Riley, worries about little things but always acts strong. We haven't been very close since the divorce. They once blamed me for not saving the marriage. But they love Leon, or at least I thought so. I called them one evening, my heart beating faster than usual. "Mom, Dad, I have a very important business trip coming up. Could you watch Leon for me for a week?" I spoke slowly, explaining carefully, trying to keep my voice calm despite the anxiety inside. My dad was silent for a few seconds, then replied briefly, "All right, we'll take care of it." My mom immediately chimed in, her voice decisive. "Bring the boy over here." They agreed quickly without complaint or conditions. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that finally everything would be okay. Leon would be safe with his grandparents and I could focus on work. I hugged my son tighter than usual before leaving, promising to call every day and bring gifts back. "Be good with Grandpa and Grandma for a while, okay? Once this trip is over, Dad will come pick you up," I whispered in his ear. The flight to New York went smoothly. I sat on the plane reviewing the negotiation plan, my heart pounding with excitement. This was my time to prove myself. The hotel I stayed in was quite luxurious, with a view overlooking the bustling streets. The first few days passed like a dream. The initial meeting went well. I presented the project clearly, step by step, and saw the partners nodding along with my words. After the meeting, a colleague sent a short message praising my performance. Every evening, I video-called Leon. The boy was still fine, laughing and talking with his grandparents as usual, which put me at ease. Once Leon said he missed me and I promised to return soon. Work gradually consumed me and my initial worries faded. In my mind, there was only one goal: the upcoming contract signing, the moment that could change the future for both father and son. By the fourth day, everything was at its peak. We entered the critical phase, detailed negotiations on financial terms. The conference room was tense, the air thick with coffee and paperwork. I was presenting slides on potential risks, my voice confident, when my phone vibrated in my pocket. I glanced at it, the number from my parents. My heart tightened. Why were they calling now? They usually only called in the evening. I excused myself and stepped out into the hallway to answer. My father's voice came through the other end, steady and unhurried. "Listen, son, we have something sudden to tell you." "What is it, Dad?" "I'm in a very important meeting right now," I said quickly, my eyes glancing back at the conference room door, afraid someone might overhear. Before my dad could respond, my mom's voice cut in, high and decisive. "Enzo invited us on a 2-week trip to Africa. He said this trip is rare, the itinerary is already set, and it can't be postponed." I froze for a few seconds. Enzo, my younger brother, the baby of the family who always got priority, always managed to arrange everything his way. "You're going to Africa now?" I asked again, my voice lowering. "But what about my son? I'm on a business trip, I can't come back right away." My dad replied, his voice still calm, as if discussing something very simple. "Then arrange to come pick up the boy. We're leaving tomorrow morning." I repeated it, feeling like I'd misheard. "You're leaving tomorrow morning? Can't you watch Leon for a few more days? I only need until the end of this week." There was a brief silence on the line. Then my dad continued curtly, "We've already decided. You figure out how to come back." I was stunned, like being doused with cold water. "Mom, Dad, I can't abandon the trip. This is a big contract. It's my career on the line. If I come back now, everything will fall apart. I'm begging you, please stay and take care of Leon for just a few more days. I'll come right after I finish." My mom sighed. "Easton, what are you thinking? This trip is important to us. Enzo has already booked the tickets and hotels. You arrange it yourself. You're grown up now." I tried to explain, my voice breaking with emotion. "Mom, this is my only chance to stabilize our lives, to provide for Leon. If I lose my job, what will happen to us? Have you thought about your grandson's future?" But they didn't care. My dad said, "No more discussion. Arrange to come pick up the boy right away." Then he hung up. I stood motionless in the hotel hallway, still clutching the phone tightly, my fingers trembling, though I didn't notice it at first. The space around me suddenly felt colder, even though the air conditioning was at a normal level. In that moment, I realized something I'd always tried to avoid facing. In my parents' eyes, I had never been the first choice. Enzo was always prioritized, while I only came into play when there was no one else. My chest tightened, my eyes stinging. I was faced with what seemed like a cruel choice, career or son. But in reality, it was never a choice. Leon was always the only answer. I stood frozen in the hotel hallway, the phone still clutched tightly in my hand, as if letting go would cause everything to collapse completely. My heart was pounding, my mind spinning. It was the fourth day of the business trip, when everything was at its peak, and now what? My parents were about to leave for Africa with Enzo, leaving Leon all alone. They said it as if it were the most normal thing in the world, like going to the market to buy vegetables. And me? I had less than 24 hours to figure it out. Their flight was departing tomorrow morning, and I was in New York, thousands of miles away. Panic surged through me like a wave crashing over, making it hard to breathe. I asked myself, what now? Leon is only 9 years old. He can't take care of himself. The image of my son alone in my parents' old house flashed in my mind, causing a sharp pain in my chest. I rushed back to the meeting room, trying to stay calm, but my hands were shaking as I held the documents. The partners were waiting, and my boss on the other end was probably expecting good news. But my mind was no longer there. "Excuse me, everyone, please give me a few more minutes," I muttered, my voice faltering. Then I ran back to my hotel room, slammed the door, and started making frantic calls. First, I thought of friends. Mike came to mind immediately. An old colleague, now freelancing, living not far from my parents' house. I called him right away. He picked up quickly, but after I finished explaining, there was silence on the line for a few seconds. Then he responded, his voice apologetic, saying his wife was about to give birth and he couldn't leave the house right now. Maybe tomorrow, but not tonight. I thanked him curtly and hung up, a heavy sense of disappointment settling in my chest. I moved on to Lisa, a college friend who now works as a teacher. I tried to keep my voice steady as I asked her to watch Leon for one night. Lisa sighed and said she was out in the suburbs visiting her parents and couldn't get back in time. She suggested I try an emergency babysitting service. That idea gave me a sliver of last hope. I hurriedly searched on my phone and called the first company that popped up. The person on the other end was very polite, but the answer was cold. They needed at least 24 hours to arrange anything, and the emergency rate was up to $200 an hour. I asked if there was any faster option, but the answer was still no. I called the second company, then the third. The results were no different. No one could come right away that night, especially at such a late hour. I started calling colleagues. Sarah from HR answered, but as soon as I finished explaining, she apologized immediately. She had young children at home. Her husband was working the night shift, and she couldn't leave. I snapped the phone shut and stood motionless in the hallway, realizing I'd just gone full circle. Friends, services, colleagues, and there wasn't a single other name left to call. The options vanished one by one, leaving a stark truth. No one but me could go pick up Leon. Every door slammed shut in my face. No one could help. I collapsed onto the bed, cold sweat breaking out despite the air-conditioned room. The only choice left, abandon the business trip or leave Leon in an unsafe situation. Imagining my son alone at night, hungry, scared. No, I couldn't let that happen. Career? Big contract? They mattered, but Leon was my flesh and blood. I'd lost my wife, lost so many opportunities, but I couldn't lose my son. With trembling hands, I opened my laptop and drafted an email to my boss. Dear Mr. Thompson, I regret to inform you that, due to a family emergency, I am forced to cancel the business trip and return immediately. I understand the consequences, but I have no other choice. I apologize for the impact on the project. I hit send, and that was it. It felt like I'd just signed my career's death sentence. I packed my things hastily, the suitcase a mess of suits and documents. At the airport, I booked the earliest flight. Luckily, there was a seat, but I had to wait 2 hours. In the waiting area, I sat huddled, my mind in turmoil. This was the biggest opportunity of my life, a contract that could change everything, higher salary, a new house, a better school for Leon. And now, I'd be fired, or at the very least demoted. Savings would run out quickly. I blamed myself. Why hadn't I planned better? Why had I trusted my parents so much? The plane took off and I stared out the window at the dark clouds drifting slowly below. The farther we got from the ground, the clearer and heavier the unease inside me became, growing with every passing minute. My heart raced, my hands unconsciously gripping the armrest tightly. Worst-case thoughts kept appearing one after another. Leon home alone, the door unlocked. Something unexpected happening with no one there. I tried to push them away, telling myself I was overthinking. But the worry wouldn't stop. It clung to me throughout the entire flight. The plane landed near midnight. I hailed a taxi and asked the driver to go straight to my parents' house. On the highway, I kept calling, first my dad, then my mom, but all I got were endless, meaningless rings. No one answered. The phone screen lit up and went dark again, repeating like a cruel taunt. The car sped through the night, headlights sweeping over the dark rows of trees along the road. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror and quietly asked if I was okay. I just nodded to brush it off, my eyes still glued to the phone, hoping for a missed call, but there was nothing. My parents' house appeared in the darkness, too quiet, no lights on, no familiar sound of the TV or people talking. My heart suddenly sank. I hurried to the front door and realized it wasn't even locked. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The house was so dark and silent that the sound of my own footsteps echoed clearly. I called Leon's name, my voice sounding strange in the empty space. No response. I went straight to the kitchen and then froze. Leon was sitting on a high stool holding a box of cereal, trying to pour it into a bowl but spilling it everywhere. He turned around, his eyes red and puffy. "Daddy, I'm so hungry." Grandpa and Grandma went away to play. On the dining table there was just a crumpled $10 bill and a short note. "Take care of yourself, Leon. Grandpa and Grandma are going out to play." That was all. No instructions, no emergency phone number. They had really left, abandoning their 9-year-old grandson to fend for himself. I rushed over and hugged him, tears welling up. "I'm sorry, buddy." "Daddy's late." Leon clung to me tightly, his voice trembling. "They left this afternoon and told me to be good at home. I was so scared, Daddy." I pulled out a chair for him to sit properly, opened the fridge to get the half-finished carton of milk, and found a clean bowl. I poured cereal into the bowl, added milk, and gently pushed it toward Leon. He ate quickly, the spoon occasionally clinking against the bowl, looking up at me now and then as if to make sure I was still there. I sat close beside him, placing my hand on his back, saying nothing. Watching him eat with his head down in silence, I suddenly felt my chest tighten. Anger welled up inside me, intertwined with overwhelming guilt. I couldn't understand how they could do this to their own grandson. But right after that, the blame turned back on me. Why had I entrusted him to them? Why hadn't I suspected something sooner? I quickly put a jacket on Leon and took him next door. The porch light at Mrs. Johnson's house was still on. I knocked, my heart burning with urgency. When she opened the door, I asked right away, trying to keep my voice calm. "Ma'am, did you see where my parents went?" Mrs. Johnson looked at me, sympathy clear on her face. "Easton, they left early this morning, with big suitcases. They said they were going on a trip to Africa with Enzo." She paused for a moment, then added, "I thought the boy went with you. They didn't say they'd be back the same day." That was enough. There was no room left for doubt or vague hope. They had really gone decisively, without a second thought about how Leon would manage. I held Leon tightly in my arms, my chest filled with a suffocating mix of emotions. I was furious at what my parents had done, but that anger was quickly overtaken by guilt when I realized I was the one who had put my son in this position. In that moment, for the first time, I began to question things I had once believed in absolutely. That family is always the safest place. That leaving my child with his grandparents was a choice that needed no second thought. I took Leon back to our small apartment that very night. The boy fell asleep in the back seat of the car, his innocent face oblivious to the storm that was raging. When we got home, I carried him to bed, tucked him in carefully, and sat beside him, watching him breathe steadily. My heart was still racing wildly, as if everything around me could collapse at any moment. I couldn't sleep at all. Lying restless in the darkness, my mind kept swirling with images that refused to fade. The hastily scribbled note, "Take care of yourself," left on the kitchen table, the crumpled $10 bill, and Leon sitting alone in the pitch-black house. Those images repeated over and over, gripping me tightly. I couldn't comprehend how my parents could do that. They were his own grandparents, after all. The next morning, the sun rose as usual, but for me it carried an indescribable heaviness. Leon woke up, rubbed his eyes, and grinned widely. "Daddy, I want pancakes today." I forced a smile, trying to sound cheerful. "Okay, Daddy will make them for you right now." I went into the kitchen, my hands trembling as I fried the pancakes, my mind still haunted by the canceled business trip. I knew the company wouldn't forgive easily. And just as I expected, while Leon was eating happily, the phone rang loudly. The screen showed my boss, Mr. Thompson. My heart tightened, as if someone was squeezing it. I stepped out onto the balcony, closed the glass door so Leon wouldn't hear, and answered. "Easton, what were you thinking?" His voice came through sharply the moment I picked up. "The contract fell apart. The partners pulled out because you walked away midway. Do you know how much money the company just lost?" I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady despite my dry throat. "Sir, I'm sorry. I understand the consequences, but my son, My parents suddenly left, abandoning him alone at home. I truly had no other choice. He cut me off. Family is important, but the company isn't the place for you to handle personal issues. You knew what this contract meant. The decision has been made. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. We'll send the official notice via email. I went numb for a few seconds. Sir, please give me a chance to explain. I did my best in that situation, and I really had no other option. On the other end, his voice responded immediately without pausing even for a beat. There's nothing more to explain, Easton. The decision is final. Good luck in your next chapter. The call ended, leaving the dark phone screen in my hand. I stood there, looking out at the bustling street below, feeling like the world was crumbling. The official notice arrived shortly after via email. Reason for termination: sudden withdrawal from business trip, leading to failure in negotiating a critical contract, causing significant financial damage to the company. No words of comfort, no opportunity for appeal, just cold lines of text, ending my 10 years of hard work. I collapsed onto the balcony floor, holding my head in my hands. Fired. What now? I'm a single father, raising Leon alone. Savings would only last a few months, and bills were piling up: rent, tuition, food. Financial crisis hit like a flood, but worse was the emotional one. I felt like a complete failure, to Leon, to myself. Tears welled up, but I wiped them away quickly and went back inside. Leon was playing with his toys and looked up. "Daddy, why do you look sad?" I hugged him, forcing a smile. "It's nothing, buddy. Daddy's just tired. What do you want to play today?" I had to stay strong in front of Leon. He was only 9. I couldn't let him worry. Every day I got up early, cooked, took him to school as usual. But at night I lay awake, calculating every penny meticulously. Look for a new job? Not yet. My mind was too chaotic. We couldn't stay in the apartment forever. Rent was coming due, and I didn't want Leon to switch schools mid-year. In the end, the only option: temporarily move into my parents' house. They were in Africa, the house was empty, and I had a spare key. It's just temporary, I told myself, though my heart was full of reluctance. I packed our things and took Leon back to the old house in the suburbs. Leon was excited. "Grandpa and Grandma's house is big. I love it." For me, stepping inside felt like returning to the past. A past full of unfairness that I'd tried to forget. The first days there were heavy. The house was silent, no laughter, just the musty smell from old furniture. Leon played in the backyard while I started cleaning to kill time and push away the anxiety. I wiped down the kitchen, organized closets, then moved to the garage where my parents stored all sorts of cluttered things from years ago. Box after box full of old papers, family photos, and childhood toys. I smiled sadly seeing my old bicycle, now rusted. Then while cleaning a high shelf, I accidentally pulled out a thick folder carefully stored in a locked metal box. The lock was broken, so I opened it easily. Inside were financial documents, bills, bank statements, all related to my childhood. My heart beat faster. I sat down on the garage floor, dust swirling around, and flipped through them. First was a certificate. Award for the 1995 Children's Painting Competition. Easton Reynolds, first prize, reward $50,000. I remembered. When I was 10, I drew a picture of our family and won the big prize. Back then, I was so excited, thinking I'd get toys or go on trips, but then everything faded. My parents said the money was saved for my future and never mentioned it again. I thought it had been lost to inflation or something, but now, the documents showed the money had been placed in a custodial account in my name, managed by my parents since I was underage. I turned the pages, bank statements spanning decades. My chest tightened as I saw most of the money had been withdrawn gradually, not for me. 1996, $5,000 withdrawn, noted as tuition for Enzo. 1998, $10,000 bicycle and school supplies for Enzo. 2000, $15,000 stock investments in Enzo's name, and so on. The funds flowed toward my brother, education, living expenses, even his first trips. Not a single withdrawal for me. I sat there, hands trembling as I held the papers, feeling like I'd been stabbed. This wasn't random, it wasn't due to hardship. This was a deliberate choice by my parents to take my money and invest it in Enzo. A storm raged inside me. For the first time, I understood that my disadvantages weren't fate, but caused by my own parents. They chose Enzo over and over. Anger mixed with pain. I sat alone in my old room, crying silently. How could they? I was their son too. Doubt spread, distorting every childhood memory. I thought about the recent Africa trip, again invited by Enzo, and they left Leon to go. Everything connected. The favoritism wasn't new. It was a long-standing pattern. I couldn't sleep that night, my mind swirling with questions. How could I face them when they returned? Where was the justice in all this? The days waiting for my parents to return dragged on like a prolonged nightmare. I tried to maintain a normal routine for Leon, taking him to school, cooking simple meals, playing ball in the backyard of this old house. But every evening after Leon fell asleep, I would sit alone in the living room, flipping through that financial folder again, as if staring at it long enough would somehow change the truth. $50,000, the prize money I won from the painting competition when I was 10 years old. It was supposed to be my future, but instead it flowed into Enzo's pocket. Tuition, a bicycle, even stock investments. I wondered, why hadn't I realized it sooner? Perhaps because I'd always convinced myself that family worked that way. The older brother had to yield to the youngest. But now, with Leon by my side, I saw clearly this wasn't love, it was injustice. Then the day they returned arrived. I heard the car pulling up outside the gate on a drizzly afternoon, the sound of suitcases rolling over the gravel path. Leon ran to the door, excited. "Grandpa and Grandma are back. I missed you so much." I stood up from the sofa, my heart pounding like a drum. My father, Hudson, entered first, tanned from Africa, grinning widely at Leon. "There's my grandson. I brought gifts for you." My mother, Riley, followed, carrying bags of souvenirs, African wooden statues, beaded necklaces, and hugged Leon tightly. "You've grown so much. Africa was wonderful, sweetie." They acted as if nothing had happened. Not a single apology, no mention of the note, "Take care of yourself," or the $10 left on the table. They rambled on about the safari, lions, and elephants, as if abandoning their 9-year-old grandson alone was just a minor detail. The atmosphere in the house immediately grew heavy, like a dark cloud rolling in. I stood there, fists clenched, trying to suppress the boiling anger inside me. Leon happily unwrapped his gifts, but I couldn't wait any longer. When my son ran upstairs to play with his new souvenirs, I turned to my parents, my voice low but firm. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk. Right now." My father raised an eyebrow and sat down. "What's wrong, son? Everything's fine." My mother sighed as if I was ruining the happy mood. "Easton, you're always so serious. Let us rest first." But I didn't back down. I'd waited too long for this moment, and the anger had built up like a ticking time bomb. "No, I want to talk now. You left Leon alone in the house without any supervision. My son is only 9 years old. What were you thinking, leaving a note and $10, then going on your trip?" The air in the room suddenly thickened, so tense I felt like one more word would make everything explode. My father shrugged with that familiar indifferent demeanor, his voice even as if discussing something trivial. "Is that what you want to talk about?" It was unavoidable. "Enzo invited us suddenly. It was a rare trip. We thought you'd arrange to come back in time." My mother immediately jumped in, her voice higher and sharper as if to shut down the issue. "That's right, Easton. We didn't intend to leave him alone for long. Besides, Leon is old enough, he can manage." I stood frozen. Not a single apology, not a trace of remorse. In their tone, abandoning their grandson alone seemed no different from forgetting to lock the door on the way out. Blood rushed to my head, my heart pounding. "Unavoidable?" I snapped, no longer able to keep my voice calm. "You called me right in the middle of the most important negotiation of my life. I lost my job because I had to drop everything to come home, to save my son from the dangerous situation you created. Leon was hungry, scared, alone in a dark house. That's not unavoidable. That's irresponsible. They exchanged glances. My father shook his head, irritation clear on his face. You're exaggerating everything. We're grandparents, not professional babysitters. You should be grateful we watched him for the first few days. Those words landed like a knife. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to breathe deeply, because I knew there was one more thing they weren't ready to face. It's not just about Leon, I said slowly, each word heavy as stone. I found the old financial records in the garage, the prize money I won when I was 10, $50,000. The custodial account in my name managed by you. But that money wasn't used for me at all. The atmosphere froze completely. My mother turned pale, clutching her bag strap tightly. Easton, why are you digging up that old stuff? It's in the past. My father frowned, his voice lowering angrily. You were too young back then. We had the right to decide. It was all for the family. I pulled out the folder and slammed it on the table. The sound of papers hitting the wood echoed sharply. For the family or for my brother? I said, my voice shaking with anger. $5,000 for Enzo's tuition, $10,000 for his bike, $15,000 for investments in his name. Not a single dollar for me. Not one. My father quickly flipped through a few pages, his lips moving silently. Times were tough back then, and Enzo needed the money more than you. My mother avoided my eyes, speaking softly but coldly. You were older. You could fend for yourself. Enzo needed priority. To us, it was a choice for the greater good. The greater good. That familiar phrase appeared again, like every time they needed to justify themselves. My heart shattered into pieces, but the anger kept me standing. The greater good? I growled. That was my money, my prize. You were just custodians, not owners. Why didn't you use it for my art lessons, for college without loans? Why was it always Enzo? Always Enzo? Those words unleashed a flood of memories crashing over me violently. I remembered being 12, begging to take piano lessons and being told we couldn't afford it. A few months later, Enzo came home with a brand new guitar, and I convinced myself it was just how siblings worked, that yielding was the right thing. Enzo's successes were always treated as the family's pride. When he graduated college, my parents threw a big party. When he started his company, they bragged to everyone as if it were a shared achievement. But for me, it was different. I graduated with honors, but got only a brief pat on the back. You're grown now? Take responsibility for your own life. My efforts were never seen as noteworthy. They were expected like breathing. I grew up as the one who always had to yield, never prioritized for opportunities or financial support when I needed it. Now, sitting across from my parents, I realized misappropriating the prize money wasn't a momentary mistake. It was the result of years of favoritism. Enzo was the golden child and I was just the shadow. The confrontation escalated so quickly I could barely breathe. My father stood up abruptly, his voice loud and harsh, abandoning his fake calm. Easton, are you still blaming us? We raised you all those years. He pointed at me. Your failures are because you don't know how to sacrifice. You always put work and your own interests above family. If you'd come back sooner, none of this would have happened. I let out a bitter laugh, my voice choking. Come back sooner? You called me in the middle of the most critical negotiation of my life. I came back to save my son, your grandson, from being abandoned. My mother immediately interrupted, her voice trembling but defensive. Don't exaggerate like that. We didn't mean to. And Leon was fine anyway, nothing serious happened. I looked her straight in the eye. Fine? He's 9 years old. When I got back, he was hungry, scared, and the thing that hurt me most was that he thought his dad might not come back. My father waved his hand impatiently. Enough. We're grandparents, not babysitters. You can't dump all the responsibility on us. My mother nodded, tears in her eyes, but not from regret. Every family requires sacrifice, Easton. Enzo understands that. You only know how to blame. I clenched my fists, my voice dropping. Sacrifice? I sacrificed my entire childhood yielding to Enzo. I sacrificed my career to protect my son. And you call that selfish? My father was silent for a few seconds, then said a sentence that made the room feel like it was collapsing. Maybe you're just not suited to this family's way of life. Those words hung between us, cold and final. I waited in a brief and foolish moment for them to take it back, to realize something. But no. They stood there looking at me with strangers' eyes. The eyes reserved for a traitor, not for the son they had just pushed out of their family. In that moment, I understood clearly. My truth, my pain, and my justice had never mattered to them. They only saw Enzo, only saw family benefits in their own way. Tears streamed down my face, but not from weakness, from clear-eyed anger. I stood up, my voice icy. I get it. You don't need to say more. They looked at me in surprise, but I had decided. For the first time, I resolutely realized dialogue couldn't resolve injustice. They wouldn't change. They wouldn't admit it. The law was the only path left. I would sue, reclaim what was mine, not just the money, but justice for the stolen childhood. I left the living room without looking back, heading upstairs to where Leon was playing with the souvenir from Africa, a small wooden elephant. The boy looked up and grinned widely. Daddy, Grandpa, and Grandma said there are real lions in Africa. I sat down beside him, hugging him tightly, trying to keep my voice normal. It's okay, buddy. Daddy's just tired. Keep playing, I'll take a quick nap. But in my mind, a storm was raging. Suing my own parents. The thought made my heart tighten. It was the hardest decision of my life, like tearing apart the last remaining shell of family with my own hands. I grew up believing that blood ties were sacred, that parents were always a pillar of support no matter what. But now, after that failed confrontation, I saw clearly. That belief was just an illusion. They had never prioritized me, and if I didn't act, the injustice would continue to spread to Leon. That night, I sat up and opened my laptop, searching for laws on financial guardianship. Articles about abuse of guardianship rights chilled me. How many people like me had their futures stolen by their own parents? The next morning, I called a local lawyer, my voice trembling. I need advice on suing my parents for misappropriating guardianship funds. There was a brief silence on the other end. Then, all right, come to the office. The lawyer's office was in the city center, a modern glass building that contrasted sharply with the chaos inside me. The lawyer, named Mark Thompson, was about 50 years old with gray hair and a calm voice like a judge. I sat down, clutching the thick folder of documents, and told him everything. From the canceled business trip, Leon being left alone, to the discovery of the $50,000 prize money. He flipped through the papers, raising an eyebrow. This is a classic case of financial guardianship abuse. The money was placed in an account in your name, managed by your parents while you were a minor. But they had no right to transfer it to someone else, especially if it didn't serve your interests. My heart beat faster. He nodded. We can sue, but you need to prepare yourself mentally. Suing your own parents isn't easy. Relatives will criticize you and the court will dig deep into the past. He was right. The news spread faster than I imagined, through relentless calls from aunts and uncles like a predetermined verdict. Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, called first. Her voice was sharp from the start. Easton, have you gone crazy, suing your own parents? Enough with the ingratitude. Family is for love, not dragging each other to court. I tried to stay calm, explaining in vain. Auntie, they took my money and used it for Enzo. This isn't about feelings, it's injustice. But she cut me off immediately, not letting me finish. Injustice? They raised you, now you're turning around to bite them, taking family matters to court. You'll regret it. I held the phone, each word hitting like a knife. No one asked what had happened. No one cared about the truth or the evidence I held. In their eyes, I had become the traitor, isolated right in the middle of my own family. The psychological pressure weighed on me like a boulder. During the day, I tried to be cheerful with Leon, taking him to the park, cooking his favorites. But at night I sat alone, hands shaking as I thought about the trial. Would I win? Or lose everything? I lost weight, couldn't sleep, my mind constantly swirling with images of my parents in the defendant's seats looking at me with accusing eyes. But then, watching Leon sleep peacefully, I told myself, I have to do this for my son, so he doesn't grow up with the same injustice as I did. I provided all the documents to Lawyer Mark, bank statements, the award certificate, even photos of the records. He reviewed the legal aspects thoroughly. Confirmed, the money went into a custodial account in your name. Your parents managed it, but the withdrawals were systematic, not for you, but for your brother. Tracing the money flow took a few weeks, but the results were clear. The expenses were directly related to Enzo. Private school tuition, monthly living costs, even assets in my brother's name, like stocks and a small investment. Not a single dollar served my needs or interests. Lawyer Mark nodded satisfactorily. This is solid evidence. We'll file the lawsuit demanding repayment of the principal plus interest plus compensation for damages. I nodded, but my heart was full of anxiety. How would my parents react? They would hire their own lawyer, and the battle would drag on. The initial trial took place after 3 months, the most nerve-wracking period of my life. The local courthouse, a small but stifling room with old wooden benches and a chilly atmosphere. I wore a black suit, hands clenched, sitting beside Lawyer Mark. Leon was at home with neighbors. I didn't want him to witness this. My parents entered the courtroom, their skin still tanned from the Africa trip, contrasting with the obvious fatigue on their faces. When they saw me, their eyes held no worry or remorse, just blame and indignation. "Easton, what are you doing?" my mother whispered, her voice trembling, tears welling up as if she were the one hurt. Enzo sat behind them, leaning back in his chair, face darkened, silent from beginning to end, avoiding my gaze. The air in the courtroom was heavy as lead. Then the judge, a middle-aged woman with a stern expression, banged the gavel, officially opening the trial. My parents' side argued first. Their lawyer, a thin elderly man, stood up. "Your Honor, Hudson and Riley Reynolds were legal guardians. They had the right to decide how to use the money for the family's benefit. At the time, the family was struggling and they chose the best way." My father testified, "We did it for the family. Easton was older, he could handle himself. Enzo needed it more." My mother nodded. "We love our children equally. There's no favoritism." Those words made my blood boil. "Equally?" I looked at Lawyer Mark. He nodded. It was our turn. Mark stood up, his voice confident. "Your Honor, guardianship rights do not include transferring assets to others, especially when it harms the ward. The money belonged to Easton Reynolds, but it was systematically withdrawn, not for him." He presented the statements. "Here, $5,000 for Enzo's tuition, $10,000 for Enzo's living expenses. None for Easton." The courtroom fell silent. The judge flipped through the papers. My parents fidgeted. Their lawyer tried to justify it was for the family's benefit. But Mark countered sharply. "Family benefit doesn't mean taking from one to give to another. This is abuse with long-term consequences. Easton had to take loans for college, lost development opportunities." Throughout the trial, the tension built. I testified, my heart pounding, as the judge asked my parents, "Do you have proof the money was used for Easton?" They stammered, "We thought it was for the whole family." No evidence. Mark presented the impacts. Easton lost his job due to related events, raising his child alone, financial crisis, all stemming from this injustice. The judge took notes. The atmosphere was taut as a wire. Enzo glanced at me, eyes full of anger, whispering something to my parents. I wondered, did they feel any regret? Or did they still see me as the betrayer? The verdict came after 2 days, a period when I didn't sleep, just holding Leon and praying. The judge ruled, "The court finds Hudson and Riley Reynolds in breach of guardianship duties. They are ordered to repay the $50,000 principal plus interest, plus $20,000 in compensatory damages. My parents collapsed completely. But I didn't look. The trial ended without a sense of victory, just the cold closure of a belief that once existed. I left the courthouse, cold wind blowing through, realizing clearly, justice could be restored, but childhood and wounds could not. The years of yielding, the lost opportunities, they were gone forever. I had just sued my own parents and won $50,000 principal plus interest, plus $20,000 in compensatory damages, totaling over $100,000 after all those years. But that money couldn't buy back the sleepless nights I spent burdened with student loans, or the times I swallowed my tears while yielding to Enzo. It couldn't erase the image of Leon alone in the kitchen with $10. I drove home, to my parents' old house, where we were temporarily staying, my mind in turmoil. Leon was waiting at home with the neighbor, and I had to stay calm. Daddy won, I would tell him, but deep down I knew this was just the painful end of one chapter, not a victory. The weeks after the trial were busy and stressful. I finalized the legal procedures with Mark's help. First came receiving the money. Direct transfers into my account, no longer going through my parents. I signed papers terminating all financial ties with them. No more joint accounts, no borrowing, no mutual support. After the trial, my parents didn't contact me directly. Through their lawyer, they only sent a brief notice. We will repay in full. No apology, no additional explanation. Enzo called me exactly once. His voice was tense and full of anger. How could you do this to Mom and Dad? The family is destroyed now, and it's all because of you. I didn't respond. I hung up, not because I had nothing to say, but because I was too exhausted from having to defend things that should never have needed defending. The money arrived in installments. I used part of it to pay off old debts and carefully saved the rest for Leon. Yet every time I saw the balance in my account grow, I didn't feel relief. Only a bitter taste crept in. This was money that had been mine 30 years ago, and only now was it returning to its rightful place. With that money, I decided to leave my parents' house. The place was tied to too many negative memories. The childhood arguments, the note left for Leon, and now the aftermath of the trial. Every corner seemed to whisper my parents' control. The kitchen where I found Leon hungry. The garage where I discovered the financial records. I didn't want Leon to grow up in that atmosphere. We need a new place, buddy, I told Leon one evening as he was drawing at the dining table. Leon looked up, eyes wide. A new house, Daddy? Like our very own? I nodded, my heart warming. Yes, just for us, where no one interferes in our lives anymore. I started house hunting, browsing real estate sites, calling agents. It was exciting, though money wasn't abundant, but I wanted something small, safe, near Leon's school. After a few weeks, I found a 2-bedroom apartment in the city suburbs. Clean white walls, a small backyard, and most importantly, no shadows from the past. Moving day brought light rain, as if washing away the old dust. I glanced at the old house one last time in the rearview mirror, my heart tightening. This was where I grew up, but also where my future was stolen. We arrived at the new apartment, opened the door, fresh paint smell, sunlight streaming through the windows. Leon rushed into his room. My room is so big, Daddy. I smiled for the first time in months, feeling a sense of relief. A life completely separate from the past began here. No calls from my parents, no criticizing relatives. Just father and son, free to choose. In this new life, I focused on finding work. Losing the old job still haunted me. I had been a project manager. Now I had to start over at a lower position. I sent resumes everywhere in finance, accepting lower pay but stability. Nervous for every interview. Would they ask about the gap in my CV? The reason for leaving? I practiced in the mirror. I needed time for family, but now I'm ready to return. After a few rejections, thank you, but we need someone with more experience. I got a call from a small company downtown. Easton Reynolds? We'd like to invite you for an interview for a financial analyst position. My heart raced. The interview went smoothly. They focused on skills, not digging into the past. "You have strong project management experience," the interviewer said. I nodded. "Yes, and I'm committed to long-term collaboration." I got the job. Salary not as high as before, but a less toxic, competitive environment. No more late-night stressful meetings, no boss yelling. The company focused on stable data analysis with loyal clients. My direct boss was Natalie Hayes, a woman around 40 with neatly short hair and a calm voice like a cool stream. On my first day, she greeted me in the office. "Hi, Easton, I'm Natalie. I hope you'll like the work environment here. We work as a team, no unreasonable pressure." She was practical, respecting personal boundaries. No questions about family, no curiosity about why I left the old job. She evaluated me based on ability. "This report is good, Easton. Your risk analysis is very sharp." For the first time in years, I felt truly respected without having to sacrifice. The new job offered more flexible hours, from 8 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon with some remote days. This allowed me to personally drop off and pick up Leon every day. He transferred to a nearby public school, not too big, but with a spacious playground and friendly teachers. Watching Leon gradually adjust to the new environment, I felt for the first time that our father-son rhythm was stabilizing again. His spirit was steadier after the ordeal. No more nightmares about being abandoned. No more questions about grandparents. In the early months, life settled into a routine. Mornings, I'd cook breakfast, fried eggs and toast, Leon eating heartily. Drop him at school, then head to the office. Natalie often gave clear tasks. "Easton, handle this report. If you need to leave early to pick up your son, just let me know." She didn't know the details about Leon, but seemed to understand, perhaps as a single mother herself. One afternoon, I had to stay late for a meeting. Before leaving the room, Natalie glanced at the schedule and asked if I needed help picking up Leon, her tone casual and pressure-free. I was a bit surprised but declined, saying I could manage. A few days later, Leon's school had an unexpected day off, so I had to bring him to the office during a team meeting. I sat him in a corner with paper and pencils, telling him to draw and wait for Daddy. When the meeting ended, I took him home as usual, not thinking much of it. On the way back, Leon suddenly said, "Earlier, Miss Natalie came over to me, Daddy." I glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Really? What did she say?" Leon smiled, his voice more excited. "She asked what I was drawing. I said I was drawing you and me in our new house. Ms. Natalie said it was really beautiful and that I'm very good at drawing." He hesitated a bit, then continued as if weighing something important. "She sat and talked with me for a while, asked what grade I'm in, if I liked the new school. She didn't scare me at all." That last sentence made me pause. Leon was usually wary of strangers. When we got home, as he changed clothes, he added casually, "Daddy, I think Ms. Natalie is nice. I like her." I was silent for a few seconds, then nodded. "Yeah, Daddy thinks she's a good person too." Father and son, we began a new phase, not living by endurance but by conscious choices. I chose a better-fitting job, a new home, and no contact with my parents, even though memories sometimes flooded back, making nights longer. Leon had his own choices too. He made friends at the new school, started taking art classes, something I had loved as a child but never fully pursued. On weekends, we went to the park together, ate ice cream, laughed like any ordinary family. The initial worries, whether money would suffice, whether Leon was truly okay, gradually faded, giving way to a rare sense of peace. One evening, Leon hugged me and said he liked the new house, that he wasn't sad anymore. I kissed his forehead and said the same. Life wasn't perfect yet. I still remembered my childhood, still worried about the future ahead. But now, we were free. No one controlling us, no more favoritism. Just the two of us walking side by side. The first few months in the new apartment passed like a peaceful dream after a nightmare. Every morning I woke up to the smell of freshly brewed coffee. Work at the new company gradually stabilized. Natalie assigned clear tasks, colleagues were friendly, and there were no meetings so stressful that they left me exhausted. The salary wasn't high, but it was enough for us to live comfortably. The savings from the trial helped me pay off all old debts, and I started building a fund for Leon, dreaming of the day he would go to college. Leon adapted quickly to the new school. He made friends with a few neighborhood kids, joined the art club, and his spirit was brighter than ever. "Daddy, today I drew a picture of us going to the beach," Leon exclaimed one afternoon, holding up a sheet of paper bursting with vibrant colors. I smiled and hugged him. "It's beautiful, buddy. We'll go to the beach for real this summer, okay?" For the first time in years, I felt like life was falling into place. No sudden worries, no haunting shadows from the past. Natalie even invited us over for dinner a few times, and Leon grew fonder of her, calling her Miss Natalie with a warm voice. I was surprised but happy. Perhaps this was a sign of true peace. But then disaster struck unexpectedly, like a punch from out of nowhere just when everything was calm. It was an ordinary Wednesday afternoon with Leon playing ball at the nearby park with a few friends. I was at the office finishing a risk analysis report when my phone vibrated incessantly. Unknown number, but I answered immediately, a bad premonition rising. "Mr. Reynolds, this is the city hospital. Your son Leon has been in an accident. He fell off his bike, serious head injury. Come right away." My heart stopped for a moment. My son in an accident? I jumped up, hands shaking as I grabbed my car keys. I rushed out of the office without time to explain to Natalie. Just a quick text. "Family emergency." On the drive to the hospital, my mind spun wildly. How could this happen? Leon was just playing ball. Images of my son smiling widely that morning flooded back, bringing tears to my eyes. Red lights, traffic jams. Everything seemed to slow down, but my heart pounded chaotically, anxiety suffocating me. Would he be okay? I prayed silently, gripping the steering wheel tightly. At the hospital, I burst into the emergency room, breathing heavily. The doctor stopped me. "Mr. Reynolds, Leon is in surgery. He has a traumatic brain injury with internal bleeding. We're doing everything we can." Those words cut like a knife. Critical condition? My son, the 9-year-old boy with the warm smile, now lying there amid machines and blood. I collapsed into a waiting room chair, my mind in chaos. All plans, the rhythm of life, work, the new home, the future, immediately turned upside down. I called Natalie, my voice breaking. "Boss, my son had an accident. I have to stay here with him." She remained calm. "I understand. Take all the time you need. I'll handle work." I put everything on hold. The unfinished report, tomorrow's meetings, all of it. Only Leon mattered. I camped outside the operating room, fists clenched, panic surging. Every minute felt like an hour, the beeping machines echoing in the cold hallway. I wondered, why this? We had just settled down. Memories rushed back. Leon smiling when we moved, Leon drawing pictures for Natalie. And now? I was helpless, only able to pray. After 4 hours of surgery, the doctor emerged, face weary. "We've stopped the bleeding, but his condition is still critical. The injury is severe. He may go into a coma. Prepare yourself." I rushed into the ICU, seeing Leon lying there, face pale, head bandaged, ventilator humming. My heart shattered. I sat by his bed, holding his small hand, tears streaming down. The following days were hell. Leon didn't wake up, only the monitors fluctuated. The doctors did everything possible, blood transfusions, medications, constant monitoring day and night. But Leon's condition worsened gradually. I barely ate or slept, just sat by his bed, holding his hand tightly and whispering old memories, as if my voice could keep him here. I reminded him of the time we went to the park, of his endless smile that day. Inside me was a tangled mess of emotions, panic and helplessness piling on top of each other. I had thought I could sacrifice anything to protect him, yet now, right before my eyes, I could do nothing more than sit and wait. Natalie visited one late afternoon, bringing a small bouquet of flowers and some food. She told me to take care of my health, that she had arranged leave for me so I could stay at the hospital. I nodded in thanks, but my mind was foggy. Her words floated past like from a distant place. Then on the third night, the doctor called me in. "Mr. Reynolds, we've done everything we could, but the brain damage was too severe. His heart stopped. We're very sorry." The world collapsed. Leon didn't make it. My boy was gone, leaving me in shock I couldn't process. I stood there, looking at my son lying peacefully as if just in a very deep sleep. Facing the moment Leon left, I understood I was touching the greatest pain of my life. He wasn't just my son, he was the sole reason I had stayed strong through the hardest years. Every decision I'd ever made, every sacrifice and effort revolved around protecting and raising him. Losing Leon felt like the core of me had been taken away, leaving a cold void nothing could fill. His passing left me completely adrift. I woke up each day no longer knowing what I was striving for, with no destination ahead. Goals that had once been clear suddenly became meaningless. I still breathed, still walked, but deep inside I was lost, like someone continuing to live only because they didn't know how to stop. The days after Leon's passing, the world around me felt hazy, as if viewed through fogged glass. I woke up early, brewed coffee out of habit, but the cup went cold because I forgot to drink it. The new home, once filled with a child's laughter, now felt terrifyingly silent. Leon's room remained untouched. The small bed with neatly folded blankets, the drawing table with crayon boxes, and his last painting. Father and son holding hands under the sun. I didn't dare touch anything, afraid that if I cleaned up, the memories of him would vanish. I returned to the office after a few weeks of leave, but most of the time I just sat in front of the computer screen, staring blankly with a completely empty mind. Work was still there. The numbers and emails appeared regularly, but I no longer felt the familiar rhythm. Natalie quietly supported me as much as she could. She assigned me lighter tasks, allowed remote work when needed, and occasionally sent a short message, without pressure. "How are you today, Easton? I'm here if you need to talk." Those simple words didn't pull me out of the pain, but they let me know I wasn't entirely alone. I was grateful, but her words seemed to echo from far away. I worked mechanically, completing reports without any soul. Colleagues whispered behind my back, "He lost his son, poor guy." But I didn't care. Everything felt meaningless without Leon. I organized Leon's funeral quietly. I didn't want to make it a big event. I didn't widely notify relatives. I didn't want fake condolences or pitying looks. Only a few close people. Natalie came, bringing white flowers and hugging me tightly without saying a word. The neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, the one who had told me about my parents leaving, also stopped by, whispering, "The boy was an angel, Easton." The funeral took place at a small suburban church under a gray sky, with light rain like heaven's tears. I chose a small white casket, engraved with his name and the words, "Leon Reynolds, forever in Daddy's heart." The priest read the prayers in a warm, deep voice, but I barely heard. My mind was filled only with images of Leon smiling widely, running and jumping in the park. I stood there, fists clenched, tears streaming down unchecked. No crowd, no music, just silence, like the way Leon had come and gone in my life. I buried him in the cemetery near home, under an old oak tree where the wind whispered through the leaves like a gentle lullaby. When everyone left, I sat by his grave for hours, whispering, "I'm sorry, buddy. Daddy couldn't protect you." My heart was empty, but the pain remained sharp as a knife. Then unexpectedly, Hudson and Riley Reynolds, my parents, appeared at the funeral. I hadn't invited them or informed them, but they came, perhaps hearing the news through relatives. I was standing by my son's grave, holding a bouquet of white daisies, when I heard a car pulling up at the cemetery gate. Turning around, I saw my parents stepping out of their old car, dressed in black but without clear signs of grief. My father, Hudson, had his usual stern face. My mother, Riley, held a small handbag and walked slowly toward me. My father said, voice even, "Easton, we've come to say goodbye to the boy one last time." No tears, no embrace, just cold words like a weather report. I froze, my heart tightening. What were they doing here? After everything, the lawsuit, the severance, now they showed up, but not for genuine condolences. My mother glanced at the grave briefly, then turned away. The poor boy. But her voice held no emotion, no feeling. They stood there, distant, like strangers attending someone else's funeral. Throughout the service, my parents maintained a detachment that chilled me. As the priest read the final prayers and everyone bowed their heads, my parents stood straight, eyes gazing into the distance, not joining in. They showed little concern for me, no questions, no hug, just a nod when I looked over. And almost no display of affection for Leon. No shared memories, no tears, no touching the grave. The funeral ended quickly, people left, leaving me with my parents. The air grew heavy. Cold wind whipped through the cemetery, dry leaves rustling like resentful whispers. After the funeral, Hudson and Riley took the initiative to speak with me privately. They didn't leave right away, but waited by the grave. "Easton, let's talk for a moment," my father said, voice still even. We sat on a nearby stone bench under the oak canopy. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained gray. My mother spoke first, voice slightly trembling, but not from sadness. "Son, we're getting old. Our health is failing badly. Your father has joint pain. I have high blood pressure. We need a large sum for treatment and retirement." I froze, staring at her. They were saying they needed money for medical care in old age right after my son's funeral. My father cleared his throat first, voice deep and firm as if prepared long ago. "Easton, you can see it. Age waits for no one. We're full of ailments now, not like before. My joints are getting worse. The doctor says without surgery, walking will be hard later. Your mother has to take expensive medications regularly." My mother continued slowly with a touch of weariness. "We don't want to burden you. But truly, we don't have much time left. Old age has come, and without money, it's miserable." Before I could say anything, my father looked straight at me and continued, voice even but cold. "Your circumstances are different now. You no longer have to raise a young child. Those long-term worries, education, future, they're not the same anymore. What's the point of holding on to so much money?" Those words stunned me. No longer raising a young child. They spoke of Leon as if he were just a responsibility that had ended, not a child just buried in the ground. Blood rushed to my head. My heart pounded wildly. I asked hoarsely, trying to stay calm. "What about Enzo? He's your son too." My mother avoided my eyes, speaking slowly as if choosing words. "Enzo is different. He's young, still building his career. Besides, he's handling his own life now." My father nodded in agreement, voice conclusive. "Enzo has his own life. But you're different. You're the most stable in the family. We're just asking you this once." He paused, then added as if framing everything. "Help us this time. Consider it your final duty to the family." Final. Those two words hung between us, heavy and suffocating. I didn't get angry. I no longer had the strength to argue. After all that I'd lost, my spirit was hollow. Anger, resentment, pain, all eroded, leaving only a vast emptiness. I sat there, looking at my son's grave just a few meters away. Cold wind blew, dry leaves fell scattered on the damp ground. My mother spoke again, voice softer now, as if persuading. "You're alone now. Keeping the money won't bring Leon back. But if you help us, you'll feel lighter in your heart. At least you'll have fulfilled your duty as a son." I looked at the inscription on the headstone. Leon Reynolds, forever 9 years old. In my mind, only one vague thought remained. Perhaps this really was the last time. I took a deep breath, throat dry and raw. "How much do you need?" My father answered immediately, without hesitation. $30,000. From the money you just got back after the trial. I took out my phone and transferred it right there. My fingers trembled as I confirmed the transaction. When the notification appeared that the money had gone through, my parents looked at each other. No tears, no apology. They stood up, adjusting their coats. "Thank you, son. We're heading home." No one hugged me. No one mentioned Leon, not a word of regret for what had happened. Only I remained sitting by my son's grave, realizing I had just given away not only money but the last tie to that family. The encounter ended quickly. They got in the car and left, leaving me alone by the grave with the feeling of being drained one final time. The wind grew colder. Rain began falling again, soaking my clothes. I sat there, looking at Leon's grave, tears mixing with the rain. They took the money from justice for my childhood, without a thought for my pain. I believed I had closed all obligations to my blood family, though I had no idea what was waiting ahead. My heart felt a bit lighter. At last, no more ties. But the pain remained, anxiously awaiting what worse life might bring. I went home, lay on Leon's bed, wondering, how could they? But then, exhausted, I drifted off to sleep, unaware of the new storm approaching. The days following the funeral passed through a thick fog, where everything around me seemed hazy and distant. I woke up each morning with a sense of emptiness, looking around the new apartment without recognizing it anymore. Leon's room remained silent, toys in their exact places, as if waiting for their owner to return. I didn't dare clean it, afraid that if I touched anything, the memories of him would dissolve like smoke. Work became a mechanical habit. I went to the office, sat in front of the computer, completed reports without any soul. Natalie continued to support me. She called to check in, brought food to the house. "Easton, you have to eat something. Don't let yourself waste away." I nodded, but her words seemed to come from another world. I lived like a shadow, breathing out of habit, not purpose. The pain of losing Leon remained sharp, but now it had shifted to a form of numbness. No more crying, just a vast emptiness in my chest. Time passed slowly, like a stagnant river that had stopped flowing. Hudson and Riley Reynolds, my parents, began withdrawing from my life quietly. There was no dramatic severance, no declarations, just a silence that grew clearer through small distances. In the first weeks, I still took the initiative to call and check on them. I asked how their health was lately, how my father's surgery went, if my mother's medications were okay, and whether the money I gave was enough for treatment. On the other end, they answered evenly, without added emotion. "Everything's fine. We can handle it. Don't worry too much." Their voices weren't cold, but they weren't warm either. It was like a door that had been closed, not slammed, just gently pulled shut, enough for me to understand I was no longer invited inside. They didn't call back, didn't update on their health as they had promised when asking for the money. My calls became less frequent because each time I heard their voices, the pain over Leon surged again, mixed with anger. Then my messages started going unanswered, a check-in sent, waiting forever with no reply. I called again. The phone rang long before going silent, no one picking up. After that, complete silence. The phone stayed quiet, no calls, no messages, and I began feeling uneasy, like a bad premonition rising from the depths. Why no updates? The money was for treatment, right? I reassured myself. Maybe my parents are focused on recovery. They're old. They don't want to bother me. I tried to convince myself it was normal, that after everything they needed their own space. But deep down, a small voice whispered, "Something's not right." I tried to fill the void with work and small routines. I jogged every morning, hoping sweat would wash away the pain, but memories of Leon flooded back. He used to run beside me in the park, grinning. "Daddy, you're too slow." Now I avoided that park, afraid seeing children playing would shatter my heart. The unease about my parents grew. I called a few more times, but still silence. I reassured myself they're elderly, busy with doctors. But the bad feeling wouldn't let go, anxiety building like waiting for a time bomb. Then, through an indirect source, the truth emerged, like an unexpected punch to the chest. It came from Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, the one who had criticized me during the lawsuit. She called suddenly one afternoon, voice hesitant. "Easton, I heard about Leon. I'm so sorry, but listen, I've seen your parents. They're healthy, no serious illness. They just went on a trip with Enzo. They're posting photos on Facebook." I froze, heart pounding. They're not sick. They're traveling. I hung up, hands shaking as I opened the computer and searched Enzo's Facebook. Even though we weren't friends, his profile was public. And there it was, recent photos. My parents grinning widely with Enzo at a luxury resort. Caption, family together, relaxing after all the fatigue. Posted just a few days ago. No illness, no treatment, just vacation spending. I dug deeper, heart full of unease. I called the old bank asking to check the transfer since I once had a joint account. The staff confirmed the $30,000 I sent had been withdrawn quickly and the flow led straight to Enzo's account. Not hospitals, not medications, but expenses for plane tickets, hotels, and shopping. The funds were confirmed transferred to Enzo for his spending and personal life. I collapsed onto the floor, bank papers scattered around my feet. The truth exploded in my head like a bomb. My parents had exploited the moment I was most vulnerable and lost, right after Leon's funeral, to once again put Enzo above everything. They asked for money citing old age and illness, but in reality just to pass it to Enzo for trips, for my brother's luxurious life. This was no longer blind favoritism, it was deliberate, carefully planned behavior, repeated even after their grandson's death. Leon, their grandson, my son, was gone, and they still hadn't changed. They still chose Enzo. I imagined them laughing at the resort while I cried by his grave, and the pain surged. How could they? After everything, the lawsuit, the losses, they still took money from me, from my pain, to feed that favoritism. My heart raced, but not with explosive anger, just a clear-eyed coldness spreading like ice flowing through my veins. I didn't seek confrontation or questioning, because I understood that words would be meaningless. They would justify, evade, blame me for being selfish as always. I was tired of pointless arguments, of lies. Instead, I proactively ended all contact completely. First blocking my parents' and Enzo's phone numbers. No calls, no messages. Then deleting email addresses, changing the address on documents, even blocking them on all social media. I made a clear, calm decision, no longer allowing my parents or Enzo access to my life in any way. No visits, no contact, no existence in my world. This betrayal didn't cause an explosive rage like before, no shouting, no punching walls, but left a clear-eyed coldness, with no more hope or illusions. I accepted that the blood family relationship had ended long ago. Only now was it definitively confirmed. They were no longer family, just strangers once tied to a painful past. After completely cutting off contact with my parents and Enzo, I entered a phase of life free from external conflicts, but filled with internal voids. No more sudden demanding calls, no accusatory messages, no shadows of the past creeping into my daily life. The phone stayed silent, the inbox empty. A false peace, like a calm lake surface hiding turbulent undercurrents. But that void, the pain of losing Leon, remained, now layered with the final betrayal's coldness, making everything heavier. I woke up each morning feeling lost, looking around the new apartment and wondering, is this my home? Leon's room stayed closed, but the silence from it echoed throughout the house, reminding me that he was gone. I tried to fill it with routines, brewing coffee, checking work emails, but my heart remained empty like a bottomless pit. Anxiety surged on late nights. What else does life have in store? But I pushed it away because if I stopped to think, I feared I would collapse completely. I continued my current job, maintaining a stable routine to avoid sinking entirely into grief. The office became a refuge. I arrived early, worked late, immersing myself in spreadsheets and reports to forget the emptiness. Natalie remained a wonderful boss. She assigned clear tasks and praised me when I completed them. Work was no longer a burden but an anchor keeping me from drifting. I avoided deep conversations, but Natalie understood. She didn't ask about Leon or family, just sent encouraging messages. If you need time off, just let me know. I maintained healthy habits. Morning runs, quick salads for lunch, simple dinners at home, even though alone. Those routines acted like a protective shell, preventing me from plunging deeper into pain. But at night when the lights went out, the inner void rose, leaving me lying awake, wondering, how do I go on living without my son? I kept a few small items of Leon's as the only way to stay connected to memories of my boy. Not everything. I didn't want to turn the house into a museum of sorrow. But a few things. The painting he drew of father and son under the sun, the teddy bear he loved hugging to sleep, and the small bicycle now tucked away in the garage. Every evening I held the painting, tracing the clumsy brush strokes, whispering, "My son, Daddy misses you so much." Memories flooded back like warm water, Leon grinning while painting paint all over his hands. "Daddy, does it look like you?" Those items didn't fill the void, but they kept me from forgetting. Anxiety when touching them. Would the pain ease or sharpen? But I still kept them because they were the remnants of my son in my life. In the early days after the loss, I learned to accept the silence in a home that once echoed with a child's voice. At first, that silence was an enemy, resonating everywhere, reminding me of Leon's absence. No more giggles, no more calls for me when hungry, just the wind outside the window and the ticking clock. I tried turning on the TV to fill it, but the artificial noise only made my heart heavier. Gradually, I learned to embrace that silence, sitting alone on the sofa, eyes closed, letting memories of him flow without resistance. Those moments were painful but necessary. I cried, then wiped my tears, telling myself, this is the new reality. Silence wasn't an enemy but a companion. Anxiety waiting to see if I'd get used to it, but gradually I accepted. The house remained empty, but I still breathed. Natalie Hayes continued to support me discreetly without interfering or pushing me to move on. She didn't show up unannounced, didn't call relentlessly. Just small gestures, work emails with notes like, "Hope you're getting better," bringing coffee to the office, or inviting me to lunch. "Just work talk if you want." She respected boundaries, not asking about Leon unless I brought it up. Natalie's presence brought a sense of safety, not to fill the void because no one could replace my son, but to keep me from falling apart completely. In moments when I sat alone at the office, mind foggy, she passed by and smiled. "Need any help?" Those words were like an anchor pulling me back to reality. Anxiety when thinking about her. Could this be a new beginning? But I didn't rush. I was just grateful for that quiet support. The relationship between Natalie and me gradually developed, based on understanding and respect for each other's wounded boundaries. At first, just colleagues, then simple dinners, often pizza at a familiar spot, talking about work and books. Once she shared about her daughter and her past divorce, speaking lightly. There were times I felt lost, but time helped me stand firm again. I told Natalie about Leon, about my childhood, about my parents' final betrayal. Not everything, just scattered pieces. She listened without judgment, only saying softly, "You've endured so much, Easton. Don't force yourself to forget." We didn't rush. No hand-holding, no promises, just being together gently. There were moments of anxiety, wondering if I was ready, but Natalie always respected that silence. She didn't push me to move forward, she just quietly accompanied me. That relationship was like a cool stream, flowing slowly but enough to soothe the parched ground in my heart. I wasn't seeking salvation in something new. I was learning to live on with the pain. Natalie wasn't a replacement. No one could replace Leon. She was just part of my new life. I spent much time reflecting on the entire journey, from a childhood of favoritism to the successive losses in the present. On late nights by the window, cold wind blowing through, I recalled, at 10, winning the prize but the money going to Enzo. Teenage years yielding everything. Marriage breaking, job loss, lawsuit, losing Leon, final betrayal. That chain of injustice was like a red thread running through my life. I realized not fate but others' choices, but now I chose how to respond. I understood that forgiveness was no longer about salvaging family but freeing myself from resentment. Resentment toward my parents, Enzo. It was heavy, dragging me down. I chose silent forgiveness. To lighten my heart, not to give them another chance to hurt. I resolutely refused to hand over the power to wound me again. Permanent severance, self-protection. I accepted that some relationships, even labeled family, need release to survive. Blood ties don't automatically mean love. My parents proved that. Forgiveness isn't permitting repeated harm. I forgave but didn't return. Sometimes the only way forward is letting go of relationships no longer worthy, as I had done. My new life wasn't complete happiness but conscious peace. I smiled more with Natalie, worked efficiently, but my heart still held the void. That peace, accepting pain, living on, was a gift I gave myself. I kept walking forward not because I'd forgotten Leon, but because I carried him in every part of my life. Memories of him were no longer just pain, but reminders of how deeply I had loved. Leon remained there, in quiet mornings, in decisions I made, and in how I learned to live slower, more careful with my own heart. In the end, I understood a simple but bitter truth. Blood ties don't automatically create love, and forgiveness doesn't mean allowing others to repeat harm. Some relationships, no matter how close once, need release so one can go on living. Not for revenge, not out of resentment, but because it's the only way to preserve the intact part of oneself.